Sometimes life brings us face to face with unexpected reunions, moments that can change everything. Clarice and Romeo experienced this twist when a routine flight brought them together and unearthed a story left in the past. Amid difficult choices and new beginnings, they discovered that love, even when dormant, can be the key to a brighter future. Ready to embark on this journey of emotion and discoveries? Clarice Landon is a flight attendant for a prestigious airline, and that night her destination was a long and familiar flight, from New York to London. She adjusted her uniform in front of the mirror, noticing the slight signs of fatigue from long working hours. Her life, between takeoffs and landings, was a constant, and she found solace in the sky's routine. Clarice had embraced this career out of passion. Since childhood, she would watch airplanes cutting through the sky, dreaming of traveling the world, discovering new places, different cultures, and living the adventures she had always longed for. But this freedom came at a cost. In the past, Clarice had an intense and tumultuous relationship with Peter, a boyfriend who, despite his feelings, could never understand the love she had for the skies. Between arguments, jealousy, and Peter's pressure for her to give up her career, Clarice found out he had betrayed her trust. The betrayal struck deep. Since then, Clarice closed the doors of her heart, vowing never to let herself be hurt again. It was an ordinary work night, and JFK Airport in New York was bustling with activity. With a composed expression, Clarice headed to the boarding gate. She greeted her colleagues, exchanging a few jokes about the long journey ahead. Deep down, she felt an increasing emptiness. The routine that once gave her purpose now left her restless. As the passengers boarded, Clarice maintained her professional demeanor, greeting each one with a courteous smile. When the airplane door closed and the safety procedures were completed, she sat by the window, watching the lights of New York fade as the plane climbed higher. For a moment, Clarice thought she saw the reflection of her younger self, full of dreams. A soft sigh escaped her lips. However, during the flight, something caught her attention. A well-dressed and handsome man, sitting in first class, seemed different from the other passengers. His name on the list was Romeo Johnson. He was absorbed, wearing headphones, but there was something about his calm and calculated posture that intrigued Clarice. This man, Romeo Montez, sitting in first class on that flight, wasn't just an ordinary passenger. He carried a story that went back to his teenage years. Let's understand a bit about that story. Clarice and Romeo met when they were young, full of dreams and uncertainties. They experienced a teenage love, the kind of intense yet innocent passion. At that time, Romeo was going through a rough patch. His family was facing a financial crisis, and he felt lost, unsure about his future. However, Clarice always had an optimistic outlook on life. She believed in the power of dreams and didn't hesitate to share that hope with Romeo. It was during one of those conversations that she said something to him that he never forgot. No matter how hard it seems, you have to keep fighting for your dreams. Those words left a deep impression on Romeo. Clarice, with her lightheartedness and wisdom, planted the seed of perseverance in him. Even after their relationship ended, due to distance and life circumstances, Romeo never forgot her. Clarice became the symbol of his turning point. From that conversation on, he worked hard to achieve his goals. Years later, Romeo became a successful man, building an empire in the tech industry. But no matter how much his professional life flourished, the thought of Clarice always stayed with him. He often wondered where she was, what she was doing, and if she remembered him with the same fondness he thought of her. Back to the present. Romeo had spent a long time trying to find her. He searched through social media, asked discreet questions, but she always seemed out of reach. Until one day, through a mutual friend from their past, he found what he had been searching for all these years. This friend, upon learning that Romeo was looking for Clarice, casually mentioned that she was now a flight attendant. For Romeo, it was like the final piece of a puzzle he had been trying to solve for years. The friend not only confirmed Clarice's new career path, but also told him which airline she worked for. With that information in hand, Romeo did something he knew might be his only chance to see her again. He researched the flights she would be working on and found out that Clarice would be on a flight from New York to London. Without hesitation, he bought a ticket, determined to reunite with her. During the flight, sitting in first class, Romeo couldn't stop thinking about Clarice. Seeing how she had changed, yet still carried that spark of determination he had always admired, stirred up long-buried memories. He knew this wasn't just a simple reunion. To him, it was a chance to close a chapter, to finally thank the woman who, so many years ago, had inspired him to become the man he was today. The flight proceeded normally until a passenger began bothering her. At first, his questions were trivial, but they soon became uncomfortable. His comments about her appearance grew bolder, and eventually, he attempted to touch her. Clarice instinctively pulled back, maintaining her composure and politely asking the man to respect her personal space. That's when Romeo stood up. Without saying a word, he walked over to the passenger, placing himself between the man and Clarice. In a calm but firm voice, Romeo told the man that his behavior was causing discomfort. The passenger, visibly annoyed, muttered something and backed down. Clarice quietly thanked him, her eyes seeking Romeo's. His calm demeanor impressed her, and there was a melancholy in his eyes that she couldn't quite decipher. Romeo gave a slight smile and returned to his seat, but not without leaving a lasting impression on Clarice's mind. Hours later, as the plane flew over the Atlantic, Romeo caught Clarice's attention, asking for a glass of wine. Despite her racing heart, Clarice maintained her professionalism. Romeo, with a thoughtful gaze, brought up the earlier incident, expressing admiration for how she had handled the situation. The conversation quickly deepened, and Clarice, who usually kept her distance from passengers, felt an unusual urge to share a bit of her life. When he asked if she traveled often, Clarice answered yes, but with a hint of hesitation. And before she knew it, she asked why Romeo was on that flight. He paused, looking out the window before replying that he was there for something personal, something important. That answer sparked a curiosity in Clarice, though she restrained herself from prying. However, the conversation didn't stop there. As the flight continued, the plane encountered some mild turbulence. Against protocol, Romeo stood up and walked over to Clarice, asking if she was all right. This time, his tone was more informal, almost intimate, which caught Clarice by surprise. When the flight finally landed and the passengers began to disembark, Clarice stood near the door, greeting each one as she always did. Her face still held the professional smile of someone used to seeing people come and go, but something inside her felt different. She couldn't shake the strange sense of familiarity that Romeo had stirred in her throughout the flight. When he finally reached the door, he exchanged a last cordial farewell with Clarice. However, as he walked toward the exit, something unexpected happened. A small object slipped from his briefcase and slid down the aisle. Clarice quickly bent down to pick it up before anyone could step on it. When her fingers touched the worn paper, she realized it was an old photograph. Curiosity hit her instantly. She looked at the photo, and for a second, her world stopped. It was a picture of a much younger Romeo, with messy hair and a shy smile on his face. Next to him, a teenage girl with the same radiant, carefree smile of her younger years. That girl was her. Clarice froze, trying to process what she was seeing. Her heart raced. How was this possible? She stared at the photo and, unable to contain her surprise, called out to Romeo before he disappeared into the crowd. "Wait." Her voice almost faltered. Romeo turned around, and the moment he saw the photograph in Clarice's hands, his eyes conveyed what his words hadn't yet said. He knew this moment would come, and now it was right in front of him. He walked back to her with a gentle smile, though the tension in the air was undeniable. Clarice was confused, but at the same time, everything was starting to make sense. The memories began to resurface, still hazy but strong enough to make her understand what that photo represented. "Is this me?" Clarice asked, holding the picture with trembling hands. Her voice was filled with disbelief. She looked back at the man standing before her. He was so different now, much more mature, sophisticated, and undeniably more handsome than the teenager she had known so many years ago. Romeo nodded slowly, his gaze intense and full of emotion. "Yes, Clarice. That's you, and me. It was a long time ago, when everything seemed so uncertain, when I was lost." She blinked, trying to connect the memories resurfacing in her mind. And then, it all came back at once. The party. The carefree teenage conversations, the shared hopes and dreams. They had met at a time when the future was still an open field of possibilities. Clarice now clearly remembered how she had tried to lift his spirits that night, how he had seemed so down, so unsure of what to do with his life. But to her, it was just another act of kindness, an attempt to motivate a young man who clearly needed encouragement. "Romeo. I remember you," she said, finally recognizing the young man he once was. "We had a brief romance, didn't we?" "I had forgotten." "I never forgot," he said softly, with a mix of nostalgia and relief. You told me I shouldn't give up on my dreams. At that moment, I didn't believe in myself, but your words, Clarice, they were exactly what I needed to keep going. You have no idea how much that meant to me." She looked at him with renewed admiration. It wasn't just the fact that he was standing there in front of her, a successful man, but the impact she had unknowingly had on his life. Romeo had changed, yes, but the essence of who he was remained, the same lost boy she had once known, now transformed into a confident man. I never imagined that a conversation between us back then could have caused this in you," she murmured, still absorbing everything. Romeo smiled tenderly. "To you, it might have been just another conversation, but for me, it was the beginning of everything. From that day on, I followed your advice, and every step I took in my life led me to who I am today. But over the years, I could never get you out of my mind. I needed to find you, I needed to thank you for everything." The silence that followed was filled with a sweet tension, rich with memories and new possibilities. Clarice could hardly believe what was happening. Looking at the man before her, it was as if she were seeing Romeo for the first time all over again, only now he was more mature, more intense, more captivating. She took a deep breath, absorbing the unexpected moment. "Romeo, I don't know what to say." He looked at her deeply, his eyes meeting hers with a sincerity that touched Clarice's heart. "You don't need to say anything. I just wanted you to know how much you changed my life. And now, who knows what the future holds." Clarice felt her heart race. Everything felt surreal, as if she were in a dream. But it wasn't. Right in front of her was the past and perhaps the beginning of something new. After the flight, Clarice spent days reflecting on what had happened. She, who had always kept her heart closed, felt something different. She couldn't shake off what Romeo had said or the impact that one simple conversation had had on his life. She then decided to take a bold step. She called Romeo. He had left his contact card with her. He answered, surprised. Clarice explained that she had thought a lot about what he had said and felt that it would be a mistake not to give a chance to whatever was connecting them. Romeo, without pressuring her, made it clear that he only wanted an opportunity to show her who he was now. Their meetings became more frequent, and for the first time in years, Clarice allowed herself to be vulnerable. Over time, they began to share their lives, their fears, and their hopes for the future. Romeo made it clear that he was no longer the immature teenager from Clarice's past and asked only for her trust in what they were beginning to build together. Their relationship blossomed, despite the challenges of their busy schedules and demanding careers. Each time they reunited in different airports, their bond grew stronger. On one of these occasions, in Rome, Romeo decided to take a more meaningful step. During a walk in the gardens, he knelt down and, with a ring in hand, proposed to Clarice. Completely surprised and deeply moved, she accepted. From that moment on, they began building a life together. Clarice continued working for the airline, while Romeo expanded his business into new markets. Years later, Clarice's life changed once more. She discovered she was pregnant, and to the couple's surprise, it wasn't just one baby but two. With the birth of twin girls, Clara and Chloe, their home filled with joy and laughter. Romeo, now a devoted father, balanced his business responsibilities with his desire to be present for his family. Clarice stopped flying and took on an administrative role at the airline. It was a difficult decision since flying had always been her great passion, the freedom that gave her purpose and motivation. But now, she had other, more important priorities in her life, her daughters. Despite missing the skies, Clarice knew that her constant presence was the best thing for her twins, Clara and Chloe. As time passed, the girls grew, filling the house with laughter, mischief, and dreams. One morning, while playing in the garden, Clara held a small toy airplane and, with the serious determination characteristic of a child, looked at her mother and said that one day she wanted to be a pilot, not a flight attendant like her. Clarice raised her eyebrows, surprised, as Clara went on to add that she also wanted to marry someone as handsome as her dad. Looking at her family, Clarice felt a deep peace. She remembered her days of independence and solitude, unable to believe that a brief conversation between two teenagers had changed everything. Now she was there, beside Romeo and her daughters, living a love born from an unexpected coincidence. Romeo, holding her hand, whispered, "Sometimes, the smallest things have the biggest impact." And together they continued writing their story, a story that began in the skies and now unfolded on solid ground, surrounded by love, surprises, and the unmistakable bond that united them as a true family. If you were moved by Clarice and Romeo's story and believe in the power of unexpected reunions, dreams, and love that changes lives, then you're in the right place. Here we share stories that touch the heart and make us believe in the strength of love and life. Don't miss our next stories. Click the subscribe button, leave a like, and hit the bell to get notifications every time a new story is posted. Join our community of dreamers and lovers of great stories. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.